Welcome to the ultimate guide to building up your bench press while also building up your physique without sacrificing size. Because it's a bit of a myth, really, that you have to pick between strength and hypertrophy. You can get quite elite, actually, quite up there, by training both. It's just about understanding how strength and hypertrophy work and tweaking the right things to make them work together at the same time. So this is gonna be a full guide, step by step, on how to do this. Because as you know, this whole channel is meant to be the channel on building strength and muscle at the same time. As a normal person, I was able to build 20 kilos of muscle while at the same time learning skills like the human flag or doing an 80 kilo weighted chin-up or a 240 pound weighted dip. So we are working on both strength and hypertrophy. And for strength, really what we're doing here is building up to your bench press that's as strong as possible, even to 3 plates and beyond. You can get pretty elite with this, as I told you before. And for hypertrophy, what we're doing is at the same time build as much muscle mass as possible, okay? Building up your physique, okay? Not choosing between strength and more of an aesthetic physique, but having both at the same time. So a note that I want to make is this is important, between programming, okay? This is kind of the strategy side versus the technique side. And why is this guide gonna focus more on programming? I believe that's much more important because if you think about it, think about a big bench or even a big physique, okay? But especially this is a trick for the big bench. With programming, you can think that over time, following the right strategy, you could like 3x your bench over time, depending on where you start, but you can really improve dramatically. But how about with technique? Like even if you go from your current technique to the most perfect use, perfect positioning, maybe you can add 20% to your bench. Okay, so I think that the big thing that moves the needle for strength and actually also for hypertrophy is programming, and that's what we're gonna focus on the most. This is what actually drives the most results. And this is important to understand. So we're gonna mention the details of technique for bench and execution, but mostly this is gonna be about programming. And the most important thing about programming, and this is where we really begin, is what is it? Where do all training strategies start from? They start from knowing how much you train. Everything starts from there. From how much, then you can, for example, derive how often, okay? The frequency or how many exercises. Everything starts with how much. How can you even create, for example, a training split without knowing how many pieces you have to put together in the training split? So everything starts from how much. That's our volume. And this is important to understand. So we start from how much and then we determine the rest. An example of volume to understand it is simply like this. So for example, let's say we're talking about chest, okay, chest, 10 sets per week versus 20 sets per week, okay? These are two examples of volume. 10 sets a week is volume 1, less volume than 20 sets. Now, the curious thing is, who do you think is gonna build more muscle between this person and this person? This person who does 10 sets and this who does 20. This person is gonna build more muscle, okay? More volume is more stimulus, and it's been shown over and over that it leads to more muscle. Now, how about this different kind of volume? How about if a person trains chest 70 workouts per year and another person trains chest for 100 workouts per year? Okay, let's say their workouts are pretty much the same intensity. Again, this is another form of volume. Volume is the quantity of training. And again, this person is gonna build more muscle and therefore more strength than this person, because strength is, on the long run, is mainly dependent on how big the muscle is. That's why hypertrophy and strength, first, that's why hypertrophy is so important, but also that's why we are able to build both together even to an elite level while also having fun, okay? So this is what volume is, and we need to be concerned for this guide on bench and physique with 3 kinds of volume, but really 3 things throughout the guide. And the first one is your volume for your bench, okay? So for your strength work. Then your volume for your bench muscles. What are the bench muscles? There are 3 main muscles that help your bench press. The first one, of course, is chest, okay? Your chesticles. Second is gonna be your triceps. And also we're gonna have your front delts right here, okay? Helping you push the weight up. So those three are gonna be the bench muscles, and they're gonna take a priority role over the final of the 3 concerns that we're gonna have, which are gonna be the other muscles, with the purpose of building up your physique. Because again, in this guide, we're trying to do both, building up a strong bench, but also your physique in general. So those are the 3 kinds of volume. Also, by the way, let me remind you of something. If you go to Project Delta and free resources, here under YouTube summaries, you can see all of the summaries of every video that I posted on this channel. And also here in the all-in-one template, you can see all of the templates that I created in the videos, and you can get all of them in one place. And I actually add new stuff to this every week and every month. You can get all of this in the free resources in Project Delta, which is free to join, is the link in the description. And also, if you want to just shortcut the learning to build strength and hypertrophy, everything that I ever learned and used, even to bring people up to very elite levels, I put in the Strong and Jacked course that you see here. A lot of the concepts in here I never even ever covered on YouTube, and people used to pay me a lot for coaching, and I used this same stuff. So even if it's just for checking this out and giving it a look, it's in Project Delta, which is the link in the description. I experimented a lot with how much to train, really even to extremes. So for strength, I tried doing ridiculous amounts of volume, but also ridiculously low amounts of volume. And what do you think happened? I said before that when you train more, you get more muscle, but for strength, it's actually a bit different. So when you look at, for example, a chart that I love that I prepared here, there you go. This shows a lot of studies combined together showing the effect on volume on hypertrophy and strength, okay? And this is gonna be important to understand how you make decisions for your training to actually not waste time in the gym, but build momentum and progress pretty much on command over enough time. So this is for hypertrophy, and this is for strength. Now, spoiler, when I tried doing more volume for strength, I actually did not make progress. When I tried doing less volume, I actually did make progress. Pretty counterintuitive, kind of the opposite of hypertrophy. So when you look at this, I was really surprised to see how accurate this was when you look at the data. So for hypertrophy, what you see is more muscle, okay, when you add more volume. Now there's a bit of a curve with diminishing returns, okay? The curve kind of flattens over time, but you see this relationship. More muscle requires more volume or faster muscle growth. While for strength, volume, the benefits of more volume plateau around here, which is just around 5 sets a week. That's very low. Like imagine the time it takes you to do 5 sets. What is it? Maybe like 15 minutes? Okay, with 3 minutes of rest, maybe 20 minutes considering the time to do the exercise. And beyond this, you don't see any benefits. Imagine training your bench 20 minutes a week and maximizing it. That's insane, but that's also pretty good news. So by testing everything, I realized pretty much on myself and on clients when I did coaching, this relationship over and over. And with hypertrophy, the same happened, the same exact thing. So there was a time where I didn't understand the importance of volume. That was a few years ago. And I thought that, man, if I skip one workout a week, like the least important one, where maybe I had to train more secondary movements, whatever, okay? Just skipped one workout a week, it didn't make that much of a difference. But I was stuck, plateaued for months, many months. Couldn't make progress. Many hours in the gym, no progress. Then, when I was able to get more motivation, also because of a better situation with work, less stress, whatever, okay? What happened is that I was able to do this workout and become extremely consistent. Guess what happened? My muscle growth went up because my strength went up, okay? That's how you can measure muscle growth when you become more advanced. You see just you suddenly making new PRs on bodybuilding lifts, on strength lifts, just overall. Your muscles are getting bigger and your strength is going up as a consequence. This happened not because I changed anything in my training, just because I was more consistent. And why was that important? Because more consistency leads to more workouts in a year, which is more volume. And for hypertrophy, more volume leads to more muscle, okay? So of course, that was the breakthrough. Hypertrophy is about new resources, okay? This is a key thing to understand. Hypertrophy equals new resources, okay? New material, new muscle. That's what hypertrophy is. To build new muscle, you really do need a good reason to give to your body, to add resources to maintain. And what better reason than actually more stress, a bigger stimulus, more training, more volume, okay? Strength is different. That's why with strength, this doesn't work. That's why strength plateaus here. Hypertrophy sees benefits all the way to here. Strength doesn't, because strength is not new resources. Strength is just a better use of those resources. Strength is just about practicing, and you don't need that much practice to teach your muscles to become more efficient at using the muscle mass that you have, okay? So if this is a bit abstract, a simple example is that hypertrophy, okay, is about going from 10 kilos of muscle, for example, let's say your quads are 10 kilos, to 12 kilos, okay? This is 2 extra kilos of meat to maintain. That needs volume as a good reason to build it. But strength, okay, it's about working with the same, let's say 10 kilos, okay? It's the same 10 kilos, but for example, using them from, let's say, like 70% efficiency, okay? Where you can, for example, with the same muscle mass, do 70 kilos of whatever lift, to like 100% efficiency. That's top strength, where you can do 100 kilos, okay? You do this with practice. Practicing the lift, doing that 5 sets a week, sometimes a bit more, to teach your muscles to do this jump from 70 to 80% to 100%. Okay? This is not about new resources, and so you don't need all the protein or the calories or the volume. Okay? So by understanding this, then we can create guidelines to start our whole strategy, which starts from volume. So how much? The answer to how much? Okay? The answer. So let's start from strength. Now that we understand, we can go very quickly, because for strength, really, it's enough to do, this is what I like to do. I like to do twice a week, okay? 2 workouts a week, practicing the lift twice a week, and do 2 hard sets and 2 easy sets. Okay, this is where we really test our strength, and this is more for practice. So our volume, you could say, for strength overall is every week 4 hard sets and 4 to 6 easy practice sets. We're gonna go over this later because we're gonna build on this. So that's the solution, the answer for strength. How about the answer for hypertrophy? Okay, how about the answer for hypertrophy? Now, for hypertrophy, and let's make this a bit more beautiful. There you go. We have 2 approaches that we can take for volume for hypertrophy. Because as you can see here, while there are more benefits to more volume, there are also diminishing returns. It means that every extra sets that you do, you're not gonna build, like if you do twice as many sets, you're not gonna build twice as much muscle. You're maybe gonna build 1.5 times. So there's a lower return on investment. So the first option, the higher return on investment one, is what I call the minimalist. Okay, the minimalist option is around 8 sets per week. While the maximalist, okay, the maximalist option, less return on investment, but more muscle overall, is 20 plus sets per week, okay? Minimalist 8, maximalist 20 plus. The plus is because over time, gradually, if you can recover from that, you can experiment with doing more and more volume. So these are the 2 approaches. The key, very important, is that regardless of the approach that you choose, you must go to failure or as close as possible while being safe. If you can, go to failure, because we know very well, and we're gonna go over failure in a second, that for hypertrophy, okay, this is the solution for hypertrophy, the closer you go to failure, the more muscle you're gonna build. If you've seen the philosophy of doing like just 1 or 2 sets and that's it per exercise, okay, there's many videos right now on YouTube going for this philosophy, okay? Because, I mean, it's very convenient, right? Less time in the gym, less suffering, 1 or 2 sets. Why do they go for this philosophy? Because it's much easier to go to failure. They critique the fact that when you do too many sets, it's harder to go to failure. But if you are smarter about it, if you know this, and you understand that you can do a lot more sets and to failure at the same time, you're just gonna grow more muscle, okay? We see this over and over, like this is undeniable. This is a lot of data points. The relationship is undeniable, okay? So the main critique is that people don't go to failure when they have too much volume. So if you want to go for the maximalist approach, and then we're gonna go over how to choose, you want to go to failure or as close as possible. So here is what I would do for today's goal of bench and building up your physique at the same time. So this is what I do. So we have the 3 types of volume, you could say, okay? We have bench, the bench muscles, and the other muscles. So for bench, okay, the actual strength work, what I would do is twice a week, okay, 2 hard sets and 2 easy sets. And we're gonna go over exactly what these look like later in the video. Then for your like bench muscles, so we have chest, triceps, and front delts. I would pick 1 or 2 to do at a maximalist approach, okay? Depending on how much time you have and so on, okay? Because the maximalist approach is gonna take quite a lot of time. So 1 or 2 of those, like for example, chest and triceps, okay? At a maximalist. Okay, so 20 or more sets per week. Okay, and the rest of the muscle, okay, every other muscle that you're interested about in growing, okay, if you don't want to grow muscle, don't train it. Very simple. You're gonna do at a minimalist approach. Minimalist, 8 sets per week, okay? And this is really, literally what I would do. So why does this accomplish everything that we need? Because for strength, we are putting in the right practice, which is what strength needs. Strength needs the practicing with the heavy weights, and we are doing it. Then for hypertrophy, the priority muscles are the ones who are getting the most volume, which is going to result in the most growth, which is going to result in a bigger bench, which is the goal for today. Nice? And we're also building our physique because every other muscle is still growing because we are still doing a decent volume, 8 sets a week, to failure. And so with this, we are accomplishing everything on the volume side. And now we can get into, now that we know how much, into the rest of the strategy. And you can see the clarity of approaching this in this way. So from how much, we said that we would go to how often. How often do you train bench? How often do you train your bench muscles? How often do you train the rest of your muscles? Okay, this is, let's actually write it here to the side, why not? This is your frequency, okay? By frequency, I simply mean how many times, okay? How many times per week you train something, either a movement, okay, a lift like the bench, or a muscle like chest. So if I train chest, like the answer to how often, for example, is training chest like twice a week. Now this is an important question because how you distribute your volume does have an effect on how much muscle you grow, but also your strength. So we want to answer this for both bench, the bench muscles, chest, triceps, and frontals, and the other muscles. So for bench, I kind of spoiled this already. My favorite answer is twice a week, okay? Because it allows you to practice 2 times. I feel that one doesn't yield the same results, okay? You need a bit of frequency for bench, and you don't spend that much time on it where it takes a lot from the hypertrophy work, okay? Unless you want to have fun, you can go to 3 times a week, okay? But in my experience, that doesn't make that much of a difference. It can make you more tired. So I think that twice a week is really the sweet spot for strength work in general, and so also for bench. For hypertrophy, okay? Or by the way, let's do an example. So bench twice a week, you could do like Monday and, for example, Thursday, okay? Well, spaced out with a lot of space in between, okay? For hypertrophy, so we have both the bench muscles and the other muscles, okay? For hypertrophy, we have a different rule because for strength, we don't have that much volume to distribute. So we know that with 2 workouts a week, we're pretty much fine. But for hypertrophy, it depends on how much total volume you do. So let's make an example of a maximalist, like some of your bench muscles, like chest, and the minimalist approach. So this is the rule, okay? The rule for determining how frequently to train a muscle for muscle growth, for hypertrophy, is that you don't want to have like a max of 12 sets per day, okay? In a single workout, you don't want to have more than 12 sets of one muscle because beyond this number, you're gonna be too tired and every set after that is not gonna be productive, okay? So it's just gonna give you fatigue, okay? Sad face, without any benefits. And that's why if you have more than 12 sets in a day, it's best to just add another day, another workout for that muscle. So if we have, for example, 25 sets a week, we can't do 2 workouts. Because one of the workouts we have, let's say, 12 sets and 13 sets, okay, total is 25, but this is over the limit. 13 is over the limit of 12, and so it's better to spread 25 sets a week over likely 3 workouts. That's it, that's a simple rule. So for 8 sets a week, the minimalist approach, okay, 8 sets, obviously 12 sets a day is the maximum. It's better for muscle growth to train at least twice a week, okay? Even though in theory you could do 8 sets in a day, if you do 2 workouts a week, you're gonna get significantly more muscle growth, okay? You're gonna have 2 quality workouts instead of 1, where the first half is better quality and the second half you're more tired. So 2 workouts a week is best. And that's how we figured out the frequency, okay? Very simply. So in summary, what I would do is bench twice a week. This is actually how I would recommend training pretty much everybody, okay? This really works. In practice, this really works. It's not just theory. This has been battle tested a lot. So bench twice a week, and for hypertrophy, following this rule, usually you're gonna be between 2 and 3, maximum 4 workouts a week, very rarely if you can recover from very high volumes. But in general, it's 2 or 3, okay? Depending on whether you have a maximalist approach, which works best with 3 workouts, or a minimalist, which works best with 2. And now that we know this, there's another thing actually that we can derive from how much, that nobody ever mentions, but makes your life a lot easier. So we checked off how often, the frequency, but we can also understand and determine how many exercises, okay? I call this the exercise number. Because if you have more training, more volume, you're gonna need more exercises to distribute all this volume into, okay? The bigger the cloud and the more the exercises, okay? Hopefully this drawing is made the point. But how many exercises? So this is actually even simpler than frequency, okay? Exercise number. So for exercise number, really, for strength, we can keep this very, very simple. Strength, which for today just means bench, okay? How many exercises should you do for bench? I would say 1, aka bench. This is your practice to get strong. We're keeping volumes low on purpose because there's no extra benefit to doing a ton of volume, and so you can do all of it just doing bench. You're gonna have the highest return on investment, you're gonna get the best practice with the actual movement, you're gonna build the most strength. So for strength work for bench, I recommend just doing bench. We're gonna mention some variations if you want to experiment, but bench is gonna give you the best results. For hypertrophy, we have a different rule. So you don't want to really have more than 6 sets per exercise. That's your upper limit. Because imagine doing, for example, for chest, maybe doing a dumbbell bench, okay? For hypertrophy. What happens if you do 1 set to failure or close to failure? 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, man, you're gonna be very tired at this point. 5 sets, 6 sets in a row. That's pretty much the productive limit. If you start doing like 7, 8, 9 sets on the same exercise, those sets are just gonna be so unproductive, it's not even worth it to do them. It's best to just take a break, change exercise, and that's why we have the limit of 6 sets, oh my God, 6 sets per exercise. So, how do we find how many exercises to do? Well, we start simply from the volume, okay? Once again, no surprise, everything starts from how much you train. So the 2 approaches were the maximalist, and the minimalist. So the maximalist, let's say it's 20 sets, the minimalist is 8. So with the rule of 6 sets per exercise, for the minimalist, you could have all the way from like 2 exercises to 4 exercises, okay? And for the maximalist, you could go from like 4 to 6. I would say this is the range, okay? Because if you were to do 3, wait a second, 3 exercises for the maximalist, that wouldn't be enough because you would go over the limit of 8 sets per exercise. And that's simply how you determine your number of exercises. And once you know those 3 ingredients, it's like what I like to call them, which is basically are, especially actually, frequency, okay, your volume first, but frequency and exercise number, okay, you can take those 2, actually let's make them a bit better, and combine them into, guess what, the training split. So what we did until now was first we figured out the most important thing to understand, okay, which is how much to train, your volume, everything starts from there. We understood this for bench, for the bench muscles and for other muscles, and from that we derived how often the frequency, how many times a week to train bench and the other muscles, and how many exercises to do for all of those, okay? And from those we can create the training split. Now the training split is simply, okay, the training split is simply how you organize your week, okay? A good training split compared to a bad training split allows you through this organization to get in more training for the same effort, because you're doing the same stuff, but if you organize it in the right way, you're gonna get more training out of it and therefore more gains, more strength, more everything, and we're all happy and good stuff. So how do you organize your week, your training split, so that you get the most gains? Well, the first rule that you want to understand is that your priorities, whatever is a priority for you, should go first. Okay? So for example, in your training split, let's say that your bench or your chest are your priorities, okay? Let's do a star. What should you do? What should you do with those? What's the rule? They should go first. So if in your training split, for example, on a Tuesday, okay, you have a list of exercises that you're gonna do in that Tuesday workout. Where do you place your bench or your chest? If you do chest, and first, if you do any strength work, really, that should go first regardless, because strength needs you to be fresh. So if there's strength, that should have like a triple priority, okay? Because strength really needs freshness. But let's say that you don't have strength work, chest is your priority, chest should go first. You go to the gym, you warm up, and you do chest as the first exercise. That's what it means to prioritize a muscle in the training split. So this is what you would do, okay? This is the key thing for prioritizing your bench, okay? Or your bench muscles like chest, triceps, and front delts. In a training split, you want to do them first. And I think an example could show you a lot of the other principles to creating a great training split. Because let's say that realistically, we have twice a week bench, okay? Then we have 3 times a week chest, because we have maximalist volume, so we train it 3 times a week. And then twice a week we have, for example, triceps, front delts, and 2 times a week, for example, back, okay? So this is what we need to work with. How do you distribute this? Well, we have chest 3 times, so we need 3 workouts. We want to spread them out. So this is a big rule. If you cramp workouts together, basically on the first workout, you're gonna be fresh, but on the second workout, you're still gonna be tired from the first one. And that's why you want to spread evenly. That's kind of your secret to training splits. Put the important things first and spread things as evenly as possible to be as recovered as possible in every workout. And that's how you get, guess what? An organization that allows you to get more training from the same effort. When you spread things evenly, you're more fresh and you get more training. So if you have 3 workouts, you may do like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay? You're ensuring there's a rest day between workouts if you have 3 workouts. Of course, if you have 4, 2 workouts are gonna be together. But let's say that we have 3, okay? So what you can do here is, again, strength work, so your bench should go first, always, regardless, because strength needs you to be fresh. So we're gonna do, for example, bench here and bench here. Now, since it's strength work, it's not gonna get you that tired, so you could even not consider this for the rest of your calculation for the week, okay? Now, the second thing that we may place is chest, okay? Chest is the biggest muscle, is the most important for bench, and unless you really want to focus, for example, on your triceps, I would put chest before triceps all the time. So we have 3 chest days, and so I would just put chest after, like as the first exercise after strength on each day. So chest, 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 okay? Now it depends. If you have multiple chest exercises, you could do chest. I like to alternate it with a pulling exercise, and then you can do chest again, okay? So, but in general, if you have over 3 days, I would put it first if it's a priority. Then, for example, we have 2 times back. Maybe we could do like here, back and back. Okay, I like to alternate pushing and pulling because again, the next time I do a pushing exercise, I'm gonna be more recovered because the pushing muscles were able to recover as I did back or a pulling exercise. And so once again, I'm more recovered, I'm more fresh, I'm stronger, I get in more training, and I get in more muscle as a consequence. So that's the game of training splits. So we have like front delts and biceps twice a week. You could do front delts and triceps. You could do triceps here, maybe triceps here, and front delts here, and front delts here, okay? Again, we want to spread evenly, but sometimes like those 2 are closer together than if we did front delts here and front delts here, okay? But we don't want to have 3-hour workouts here and 30-minute workouts here, okay? So we want to also make the length of the workout, how many exercises we have in each day, reasonable. But really, the main principles are spreading evenly, spacing evenly, both in terms of the choice of how many days you do and which days you train, but also for each exercise, especially the most important ones, you want to spread them evenly apart. So we do bench here and bench far into the week, okay? Monday and Friday in this example. And so this is literally what I would do. And we figured out with this, the volume, the frequency, and from that, the training split. Now, if you have your training split, the problem is, what actual exercise are you gonna do for chest, for bench, for triceps, okay? And for the rest of your body? Like, how do you choose the best exercises? What are the best exercises for each muscle? How about the bench variations? And so that's what we're gonna cover next. So from training split, where is it? There you go. From training split into the science, if you want, of exercise selection. So I prepared some of my favorite personally exercises for the priority muscles, okay? So we know that we need like 3, 4, 6, 8, whatever number of exercises, we determined that before, but which one are best? So for bench, honestly, while I have some variations that you can experiment with, for bench, my favorite exercise is bench press itself. And unless you want to train for a powerlifting bench, really you don't even need to do a pause, okay? You can do bench without a pause, sorry, and that's completely fine, okay? Every other exercise we don't do a pause, and for some reason with bench, many people who don't care about powerlifting feel like they have to do a pause. Just giving you permission right now, you don't have to do a pause in your bench, okay? This doesn't mean like rebounding like an idiot. Of course, control your weights, don't get hurt, but you don't need to do a pause unless you're interested in a powerlifting execution. So bench is my favorite exercise, and I feel like for 99% of people, for these purposes of building both strength and muscle at the same time and have more fun and get to a high up level, you don't ever really need any of those variations. But if you want to have a bit more fun, if you want to experiment with some variations to see if they help you with the technique, getting strength in some weak spots, these are some things that you can try. So first is a paused bench press, as I just said. Second is a cambered bar that allows you to do more range of motion. This could be great for hypertrophy as well. Or a floor press to work more on the final part of the range of motion in your triceps. Spoto press is where you do a bench, but you stop not at your chest, but a bit above. Feet up bench press and a close grip bench press, okay? I find a close grip bench press, for example, I really like it for a hypertrophy exercise. Gives me less trouble for my shoulders. So you can experiment with variations, but for strength, I just recommend to keep it simple, honestly. Many times it's just even more effective than adding in complexity that oftentimes just, I don't know, makes the practice less directed and gives you less results. But for bench, this is some of the variations if you want. But let's talk about chest, triceps, and front delts. So this is, for chest, my favorite exercises, okay? Something that you can try. My favorite chest exercises are the dumbbell bench press, weighted dips, which made me build a ton of chest muscle, weighted dips, and actually those two are my all-time favorites. Even you could say some variations of a barbell, regular good old bench press is very effective for building chest muscle, okay? But you can also experiment with incline benching of all kinds, dumbbells, barbells, dumbbell flies, machines, okay? There's really a lot, and I'm actually soon gonna release a full, very extensive exercise database. And if you want to be the first one to use it, because it's very useful, I always come back to it. I have a personal one, I'm just about to make it public. You can join Project Delta below. That's where I'm gonna release it. But these are some of, to give you some ideas, chest exercises, and those two, okay, especially free weights, you're gonna see this pattern, are my favorite exercises, okay? Free weights are dumbbells, barbells, okay? Even weighted dips, okay? The opposite of free weights is machines, and they tend to yield less muscle growth. So for front delts, these are some of the exercises. So those two are my favorites, overhead press and a seated overhead press with dumbbells. I really like those two for building your front delts, but you can also do front raises or any variations of these, like you can do this one arm at a time, you can do this with a barbell, you can do this with dumbbells, you can use machines, okay? There's a lot that you can do. Again, a full exercise database is coming soon, but those two are my favorites. And for triceps, my favorite absolutely is a French press, okay? I really love this. It's again, an example of free weights, okay? But you can also work it with tricep push down, overhead tricep extension. You can do this or this. One arm is gonna give you some variation, okay? So to help you choose, especially between all of these exercises and all of the options that you can find on the internet very simply for choosing exercises, I want to give you two simple principles. One is just for preference, okay? And it's the idea of free weights versus machines, okay? This is the thing with free weights and why I like them so much. First, I think they're more fun, but second, they have a higher return on investment for your time. So if you do like 4 sets of free weights, they're the equivalent of like 6 to 8 sets, often, not always, of machines, okay? Because just the nature of the free weights is just more stressful, more heavy. After you do a heavy set with free weights, for example, a dumbbell bench press or a regular like barbell bench press, you're gonna find yourself a lot more tired than any chest machine can make you. That's just in the nature of free weights. And so you get more training for less sets, a higher return on investment. So if you want to save time, or in general, I would recommend always having some free weight exercises. But if you want to save time, this is where you can focus on. But here comes the most important thing for exercise selection for building muscle, okay? Which is crucial if you want to build a strong bench, okay? So if you want to build up a big chest, big front delts, big triceps, which are crucial, a big bench won't arrive without those three. The most important principle for exercise selection is first to fail. First to fail, okay? First to fail means that your target muscle must be the first to fail in the set. So if I want to train chest, but the first muscle to fail is my triceps, okay? Guess which muscle I'm gonna grow more? The triceps. Going to failure is extremely important for hypertrophy. Extremely, ridiculously important. So if your exercise is not, like the target muscle is not the first to fail, you must either change exercise or tweak the execution, the form, so that your target muscle is the first to fail. This is so important, okay? If you just do this right, you have like 95 or more % of exercise selection solved with just this principle. Because no matter pretty much the exercise that you choose, if your target muscle is going to failure, you're gonna grow muscle. That's about it. So first to fail is the most important principle for exercise selection for hypertrophy. So really, this is how I choose my exercises, and you see the logic. So you don't even have to believe me. It's based on the logic of failure, which is hugely important. That's how I personally derived this principle the first time, understanding the importance of failure. A side note, very quick, is when to change exercises. Now, this is quite an interesting question because we never think about it actively, but then you're then in the gym and you kind of change exercises. I won't say randomly, but kind of. You don't have a logic, a specific rule for changing it. So this is what I recommend. I don't recommend the idea of like muscle shock. This is just ungrounded and it causes problems because you don't even get the time. Like muscle shock is when you change exercises very frequently to shock your muscles continuously, okay? There's some truth to this, but I think that the costs of never allowing your body to actually get strong at the exercises because you keep changing them is a bigger cost than the benefit of the muscle shock. So here is what I would do. Change the exercise only when you can't make progress for let's say for 4 weeks, okay? So if your best performance with an exercise, let's say with an example, dumbbell, bench, okay? If your best performance from last month is better or equal than your best performance from this month, then it's time to change the exercise. You're plateauing, okay? You squeezed out everything from it, and so it's time to change it. So if last month we did like 30 kg dumbbells for like 10 reps, okay? And this month we did 30 kg for 10 reps, again, as our best performance, not our last performance, our best performance, it's time to change. There was no progress. If we did 30 kg for example, 11 reps, even if it's just a tiny PR, keep it. If we did like 32 kg for 9 reps, even just because it's a higher weight, keep it, okay? Next month, you're gonna see if you're still making progress. Because if you're making progress, even if you do like this like for a year, it means it's working. It's working. You don't need to change something that's working, okay? So my rule is, look at your best performance from last month, from your last program. Look at your best performance from this program. If it's either worse or the same, change it. If not, keep the same exercise, even if it's for a whole year. So now that we know everything about exercises, we know how to pick for strength. Wait a second, come on. Which for me, the best is just doing the exercise. And for hypertrophy, I gave you some favorites, but the big rule is first to fail. Let's talk about failure, because how close do you bring each of those exercises to failure? Okay? I like to call this variable closeness to failure, because it's pretty self-explanatory, okay? You may hear this called intensity or just failure, okay? But it's really closeness to failure. How close should you go to failure? And there's a big difference between strength and hypertrophy here. So, for example, closeness to failure. Failure, what is failure? Failure, pretty simply, okay, failure is when, for example, in a bicep curl, you just can't do another rep no matter how hard you try, okay? You're just going, okay? You get slower, you put in a lot of effort, and you just can't close another rep. That's failure. Failure is it's when you can't physically do another rep. And when you look at data on this is very interesting, which is here. There you go. There you go. This is surprising data on failure, okay? You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. So we have data on failure from hypertrophy and from strength. Now in practice, I saw the same thing, but it's pretty logical, right? Let's just think about the logic, okay? For a second. If you go closer to failure, then the set is harder, okay? So closer to failure equals harder set, which equals more training. Like a harder set is more stressful. That's the definition of more training, which equals more growth. That's the logic. What do you see in practice? On this side, we have failure, okay? So this is closer to failure than this, and this is muscle growth. What you see is that the closer you go to failure and the more muscle you grow. Okay, so closeness to failure, the benefits don't stop here. Don't stop close to failure. The benefits go all the way to failure and actually even beyond, okay? So techniques where you do even half reps after you can't complete a full one, sometimes yield even more muscle growth than just going to failure. So this is the relationship between hypertrophy and failure. So the closer you go to failure and the more muscle you're gonna grow. So if you don't go to failure, you're just gonna spend more time, more suffering to get the same growth. You can get the same growth with less sets to failure. This is actually good news. But how about for strength? With strength is a bit different because what happens when you go to failure? So the strength, let's do this, okay? Strength logic. This is why this is different, because strength is different because it needs you to be fresh. It needs you to be not tired, fresh, okay? So that you can put in quality work and lift heavy, okay? You can practice with heavy weights when you're fresh. If you're tired, then you can't lift heavy weights. And so you're not practicing your strength. So what does it mean? How can you be more fresh? How do you do that? To be more fresh, you need to, reduce fatigue. And fatigue is reduced when you stay away from failure, okay? If you stay a bit away, a bit farther from failure, then you're gonna have less fatigue, you're gonna be more fresh, you're gonna train with heavy weights, and you're gonna build more strength. So it's kind of the opposite of hypertrophy. What do you see in practice when you look at the data on this? This is very illuminating. There you go. Pretty much you see that even if you go all the way to failure or quite far away from failure, this is 10 reps in reserve, okay? You see the same strength gains, with the exception that here you're gonna also get a lot of fatigue, while here you're gonna get a lot less fatigue. So where should you be? I think there's benefits to being here and here, okay? So here you actually, if you go closer to failure, okay, here's the benefits to both approaches. Close or far from failure for strength. And then we're gonna turn this into very specific guidelines so you can just apply this. So if you go closer to failure, I think the benefit is that you can practice with higher weights. Okay, this gives you kind of specific adaptations that you don't quite get if you never touch high weights. But you want to do just a few sets right here. I like to do 2 hard sets per workout. Just 4 sets like this in a whole week. And it's very low reps, so the fatigue stays low. But if you stay far from failure, sure, the weights are not gonna be high, but you're still gonna get the benefits from practice. Okay? Just even doing a few extra reps on the same movement is gonna make you more efficient, which is what strength is all about, okay? And I like to do 2 or 3 sets of this, okay? So I kind of like to do 2 hard sets. I said earlier in the video, 2 hard sets means closer to failure, and about 2 to 3 hard sets farther from failure for practice. And now you see here the logic behind that, why that's what I recommend. And I can tell you this, in practice, it's very effective. It's surprisingly effective how you can train very far from failure and still see a ton of strength gains. Of course, until you reach the limit of how big your muscles are, and then it's time to work on your hypertrophy, okay? And so knowing this, okay, this is what I would do with closeness to failure. Let's write it here, okay? What I'd do. So for bench, again, we have the 3 objectives: bench, bench muscles, and other muscles. So for bench, which is our strength work, I like to do 2 hard sets, and I like to do them at 2 reps in reserve, okay? So when you feel like you can do another 2 reps before you reach failure, you're gonna just get this with experience. It's actually more precise than you think if you've never tried this. So whenever you feel like, oh, I have about another 2 reps before I hit failure, this is where you stop. This is pretty intense, okay? So 2 hard sets at 2 reps in reserve and 2 to 3 easy, okay, practice sets at like 6, even to 10 reps in reserve. At this point, I don't even look at reps in reserve. I just feel like I don't want my muscles to burn. I don't want to struggle to complete the set, okay? It's like an RPE 5 in terms of effort, okay? So the set is right in between easy and medium difficulty. This is a good position to practice where the weight is heavy enough so that you feel it, but it's not so heavy that you get tired from it. That's the perfect position for practicing. If it's too light where you can't feel it, it's not very productive practice, okay? It's probably too light. So this is for bench. How about for the bench muscles and actually the whole of hypertrophy work? It's the same principles. What I would do here is I would not do some easier practice sets. I would go as close to failure as possible. As close to failure as possible. The only thing limiting you is safety, okay? So for things like if you're doing a barbell incline bench to failure, you don't want to just collapse under the barbell and get killed, okay? So when I say as close as possible, within the ranges of safety. But if you can go to failure, you're gonna get more muscle out of it for hypertrophy, okay? So it's pretty simple. For bench, I do 2 hard sets, 2 easier sets. For hypertrophy, I just go all the way to failure on every set if I can. And you're just gonna get more muscle. Now, the only exception is new exercises, okay? New exercises. So if you haven't done an exercise for more than, I would say, 1 or 2 months, which is not much. So in your exercise rotation, you're gonna take away some exercises and replace them with new ones. Once you exhaust them, you're gonna reintroduce the old exercises. The problem is, you're not used to the old exercises anymore because you took a break of 1 to 2 months. So this is to say that if you go to failure with the new exercises, you risk getting hurt. We want to avoid that. So what I do is a safety month for new exercises. This means that I take 4 weeks, okay, to gradually get closer to failure. So this is gonna be pretty easy. And on week 4, I'm gonna go to failure, okay? So I take a safety month for new exercises to avoid getting hurt. And by the way, since you're not used to them, even the easy intensity is gonna still give you soreness and you're still gonna grow muscle. So you're just getting all the benefits without the risk. And really, you can do this if you're not used to doing bench even for strength. I sometimes like to do even 2 months easing into the higher intensities, okay? But once you're cruising, once you got used to failure and you did your safety months, if you want, you can just go as close as possible to failure for hypertrophy. Don't be afraid of that. And 2 hard sets and 2 or 3 practice sets for strength. But now you know how close to go to failure, okay? This was the variable of closeness to failure. Closeness to failure always works with another variable, okay? They always work together. And the variable is reps, okay? How many reps to do? The combination of closeness to failure, okay, right here, and how many reps you do is, the combination is the weight that you use. So how do you choose the weight? It depends on how many reps you do and how close you go to failure. So before you have everything you need to create your program, you must know how many reps to do. And again, we must know this for your bench, okay, your main strength work, And for pretty much your hypertrophy work, both your priority muscles, your bench muscle, chest, triceps, and front delts, and also the other muscles, okay? Now, we know this already, okay? So in terms of reps, you're gonna have probably heard over and over that for strength, you need less reps, more in the 1 to 5, 1 to 6 range. And for hypertrophy, you're gonna grow muscle in maybe the 6 to 12 range. Actually, when you look at it, you're gonna pretty much grow the same muscle as long as you go to failure, all the way from 4 reps to 30 reps. So this is actually the hypertrophy rep range that you can work within. Okay, if you go below 4 reps, it's gonna be hard to get in enough volume, okay? Because just doing 1, 2 reps at a time, it's not gonna be enough to build enough total work to grow muscle. And if you go above 30, you start getting into endurance territory. And so again, you're gonna grow less muscle. So this is the range, but the sweet spot is between 4 and 12 reps in my opinion. If you go above 12 reps, you can absolutely do that, especially if you go above 20 reps. Going to failure is gonna be very hard because it's gonna burn like a motherfucker. That's the problem. And if it burns and psychologically you can't go to failure, you're just sacrificing muscle growth. So if you're struggling with that, just stick to a lower rep range, like 4 to 12, okay? So now we know that pretty much as long as you work within this or within this range, you're pretty much fine. So this is what I would do actually in practice. So for bench, I like to do this. We say that we do some hard sets and some easy sets. So for the hard, okay, bench, for the hard sets, I like to do 2 hard sets. I like to do a 1 by 1, okay, just a single, and a 1 by 3, okay, just very low rep, 1 rep, 3 reps, so that I practice with high weights. That's very important. And then for the practice easier sets, here the goal is to get in more reps with the bench, okay? The problem with just doing 1 or 3 reps, while they're less fatiguing than doing higher reps, is that you don't get that much practice. You just do 1 rep, okay? You don't get that much total practice. It's important to do more reps. So for the practice sets, I like to do, just 1 arrow. I like to do 4 to 6 reps. It's easier, so it's not gonna be that fatiguing, but I like to stay in the higher range of strength, okay? Now for hypertrophy, it really depends on the exercise. So how do I choose between 4 and 30 reps or everything in the middle, in between? So if it's a free weight, compound exercise. So I decide and make this decision based on the type of exercise first, and then on my actual experience in the gym in practice, okay? But we can classify 3 big types of exercises, okay? There are free weight compound exercises, machine compound exercises, and then isolation exercises, okay? So free weights means barbells, dumbbells, everything that's not a machine is pretty much free weights, okay? And compound means that it's not isolation, it's not just one muscle. So example of free weight compounds are bench, squat, pull-ups or chin-ups, dips, or even just dumbbell bench press, or barbell rows, okay? Mainly they are about the big muscles like legs, chest, and back. Exercises tend to be compound exercises. So these are the heaviest, the toughest, the ones that are the hardest to bring to failure if you go over a certain rep range. And with those, I like to work in the range of usually 4 to 10 reps, okay? I don't like to go over 10 reps with those. For machine compounds, so it's like a leg press or a chest press, okay? Basically, it's the same muscles, but with machines, I like to stay in the like 5 to 12 rep range, okay? Or even a lat pull down is a machine compound, okay? And for isolation, which is like bicep curls, tricep extensions, okay? You can go with higher reps with those. Also because with lower reps, they tend to be more risky. Like imagine doing a bicep curl just 4 heavy reps. You risk tearing everything apart, okay? So for isolation, I like to work in the 8 to like 15 rep range. So this is how I make my starting decision on how many reps to do for hypertrophy in this whole range based on the type of exercise. And then I test it in the gym and I see if I like it. If I feel that the rep range is too high, I just lower it. Very simple. Over time you iterate, you find your comfort zone, and you can work out smoothly. But there's an extra thing that we need to understand with reps and weight, because the two actually work together. So sure, weight is the product of reps and closeness to failure. But for hypertrophy, there's a smarter strategy called double progression, where we can actually manage both so that your performance and your weight, so that your weight is perfect no matter how strong you are and your performance on that day. So this is what I mean exactly, okay? We figured out reps. So for strength, it's the 1 to 6 rep range, and especially for hard sets, I like to work in the 1 to 3, and for practice sets in the 4 to 6. And for hypertrophy, it depends on the type of exercise. But the problem is that on any day, you're gonna notice this. You actually have noticed this already. You're not always like the same strength, or there's not like a linear progress over time. What happens is more like this. Hopefully there's progress over time, but there's all sorts of ups and downs and ups and downs. Some days you just feel like shit. Some days you feel extremely strong. And so how do you handle this variation, this fluctuation up and down with a rigid program in the gym? Because if your program just tells you everything, if your program tells you how close to go to failure, the reps and the weight, then that same program on bad days is gonna feel too hard, and on good days is gonna feel too easy. But we want to make the program easier on bad days and harder and squeeze everything out of the good days. So this is what we can do. For strength, I have an actual full video that I made recently on this topic that goes in more detail. But this is the most important parts. For strength, I use something called anchor sets. And basically, the easiest way to apply this is what I call the 3-set attack. Okay? It's a way to structure every strength workout that's pretty damn effective. So what you do is 3 types of sets. I do 1 by 1, a 1 by 3, and then a 2 by 6, or actually 4 to 6 reps, okay? So those are the hard sets, those are the easy sets, okay? So we know that those are gonna be 2 reps in reserve from before, 2 reps in reserve, and this is gonna be pretty easy or medium easy. Now, we're talking about weight here, okay? How to find the perfect weight even as your performance goes up and down. Okay, let's delete this. How do you do that? Basically, I use the first set as an anchor set, okay? So I don't know before, I don't plan the weight for my first set. I don't plan this. What I do is I warm up gradually until I do one single rep. That's 2 reps in reserve, okay? I warm up gradually to this. So for example, for bench, on good days, maybe this is gonna be like 130 kilos, or I don't know what this is, like 300 pounds, okay? On bad days, maybe this is 115 kilos or 250 pounds, okay? Or maybe 270. So you can see the variation. On good days, I'm stronger. On bad days, I'm weaker. And then I can use this as an anchor set because the other sets are gonna be, I'm gonna be choosing the weight based on this. So on the 1x3, you can use 90% of this number. And for the 2x6, for example, you can use around 65% of this number, okay? So let's say that for ease of calculation, on a day, actual day in the gym, you warm up, you work with higher and higher weights, and you find out that your 1x1 with around 2 reps in reserve is with 100 kilos, okay? That's 220 pounds. So you're gonna do your 1x3 with 90 kilos or whatever, like 200 pounds, okay? And you're gonna do your 2x6 with just 65 kilos or about 140 pounds. So you can see how those two are pretty hard, but pretty precise. And the practice sets are pretty easy because doing sets with 65 kilos or 140 kilos for someone who does 100 kilos or 220 pounds, they're pretty easy, but they're awesome for practicing because we know that even sets that seem too easy for strength are actually surprisingly productive. Like you're gonna see a lot of strength just from those easy sets. It's surprising. When you try it, you're gonna be surprised. But this is awesome for finding your weight because the time that instead of 100 kilos, maybe you get better, maybe you feel stronger, you do 120 kilos, okay? All of the rest of the workout is gonna squeeze that extra strength. It's gonna still be productive because it's just a percentage of the first anchor set. So instead of 90 kilos, maybe this time is gonna be 105. Instead of 65, it's gonna be like 72, okay? So if you're stronger, every set gets stronger. If you're weaker, every set adjusts to that. And so this is the solution for strength. Now for hypertrophy, the solution is a bit different, okay? We actually can get away with less precision and without the need for percentages with a method called double progression. So a very popular topic is how do you progress your variables in the gym? Like how do you progress your reps, your closeness to failure? So with double progression, we can take care of both reps and load, reps and weight at the same time, okay? That's why it's called double progression, okay? So we can adjust both reps and weight to make sure that regardless of how our strength fluctuates throughout the weeks and months, this is the weight intensity, the most important part is always perfect, okay? And I'm gonna just show you with a simple example. Again, I made a video on this very recently. So you just take an exercise, okay? For example, what can we do? Like a tricep extension, okay? You pick a rep range, for example, like 12 to 18 reps, okay? Let's write this better. 12 to 18 reps. You know that you want to go to failure and you have a starting weight. So if you don't know what weight to start with, you just can take the upper limit or the lower limit. Let's do something in the middle, okay? Like 15 reps. What's a weight where you can do 25 reps, so 10 more than this? And that's your estimate starting weight. So let's say that for me, I'm gonna start with 15 kilos or whatever, 35 pounds, okay? So this is what you start with, okay? This is what you have in your plan, your strategy. This is how double progression works, okay? Sorry, oh my God. With double progression, you ignore the reps and you just focus on the weight and going to failure or whatever closeness to failure you have planned, okay? So what you do is you grab your 15 kilos, okay? And you go to failure on your first set. Ignore the reps, just go to failure. Let's say that you do like 17 reps, okay? Good. You are between the lower limit and the upper limit, okay? You are in the middle, and so you change nothing. In the middle, change nothing. And let's say on the other sets, you're also in the middle. Now, next week, for example, again, 15 kilos, you go to failure, you ignore the reps, but this time you do, instead of 18 reps or 17 reps or whatever, you just go all the way to failure and you do 20 reps. This is over the upper limit. What do we do now? Now, the important thing is that you still went to failure. The important part you still did. That's the key. But you went over the upper limit. So for the remaining sets of this workout, you change nothing. So you keep 15 kilos. But next week, okay, so this is next week, instead of starting with 15 kilos, maybe you start with 17.5 kilos, okay? So you added one jump, one tiny jump to the weight, because last time you went over the upper limit. Now, let's say, again, you go to failure. Let's say that you have like 4 sets. On the first set with the higher weight, you do like 15 reps, okay? That's within the upper and lower limit, we change nothing. On your second set, you do 12 reps. That's within the limit. It's the lower limit, but it's still within, it's not lower. And so you change nothing. On the third set, you do 10 reps. You're getting more tired. That's normal. You're still going to failure, but you went below the lower limit. So what do? For the final set, for the remaining sets, you go down one jump and you do it with 15 kilos, okay? Again, you go to failure. For example, you do 13 reps or whatever, okay? Now you went below the lower limit in one of the sets. What do you do next time? So this time, you lower the weight for the remaining sets. Next time, you change nothing. You start from 17.5 again. And that's double progression. Okay, this allows you to nail all the time the most important variable, which is how close you go to failure, and adjust the number of reps and the weight based on your overall progress over time, and how strong or weak you feel on any day, because your performance fluctuates. That's normal. And this allows you to adapt to that, okay? So for reps, we understood the rep ranges. For strength, 1 to 6, for hypertrophy, 4 to 30, and we can make the decision based on the type of exercise: free weight compound, machine compound, isolation, and then testing it out in the gym. And then for strength, I like to use the 3-set attack for picking my weight so that it's perfect every time, regardless of the fluctuation. And for hypertrophy, I use double progression, which is just amazing. I really recommend that you try this, because it just takes care of what weight I'm gonna use, how many reps should I do, what should I do when I'm weaker and stronger, okay? Now, a little bonus that I want to add here is, what if we want to test our strength? Okay, so one of the fun things about training for strength is testing your peak strength. Okay, your 1 rep max. So if you go about it gradually and you prepare for it, it's not that dangerous, okay? Most injuries occur not when testing your max strength, but during training, okay? When you do more volume. So what if you want to test your peak strength in your bench to see how strong you got? So this is a simple approach that actually is pretty effective. So you're gonna take 1 to 4 weeks, based on how much you care about this, to unload all the fatigue for your peak strength. So this is the key, okay, to testing your peak strength, is that normally your strength is gonna be here, okay? And your fatigue, wait a second, your fatigue is gonna be here, okay, from all the training that you do. What happens, even if you change nothing, when you take a deload, okay, you reduce how much training you do, your strength naturally goes up. And this is where you want to test it. So the easiest way to test your peak strength is to just take a 1 to 4 week strength phase, peaking phase, where you pretty much just reduce the fatigue so that your strength goes up and then you test it. So a simple approach that you can do is for the whole 1 to 4 weeks, okay, whatever length you prefer, you do no hypertrophy training. This may sound crazy, but just by doing the strength work, you're not gonna lose any muscle and you're gonna reduce all of this fatigue. So no hypertrophy training. And for your last week, okay, last week, this is what I like to do. I do just 2 workouts, actually 1. So I have the test day here, okay? I just do like 1, 2, 3 rest days. And right here, I do 1 light workout. And that's it for the week. So a light workout is like doing, for example, a 3x1, very easy, okay? A weight that you can do like at 5 reps in reserve. And that's it. Like, so if your bench, like you know that your strength is about where you can do 100 kilos or 220 pounds as your 1 rep max, you can do a 3x1 with 80 kg, okay? This is gonna feel very light, 75 to 80, or maybe 150 pounds, okay? So this is gonna feel very light, and that's what you do on the last week to really taper off any fatigue, and then you can test your strength and have fun with that. So notice how now you have all the ingredients to a training program. We started from volume, how much to train for both strength and hypertrophy. From that we derived how often to train and how many exercises to do. Once we had this, we worked on the training split and the exercise selection with our favorite exercises right here. And then we figured out the remaining details, how close to go to failure, the reps, the weight, double progression, and all of that. And actually, in the link in the description, Project Delta again, you can find a sample program that I created that helps you apply all of this to build your strength and your physique at the same time. It's a very realistic program that you can just take and use. So if you want to get it, it's free. It's the link in the description. But now, really, training is the most important part, of course, of this. But we should also talk about nutrition, because there are things about nutrition that aren't so obvious. There you go. Nutrition. That can influence quite a lot the results if you get them wrong, okay? Now, the beauty of nutrition is that regardless of what many may say, it's much simpler than training. So the question is, how does nutrition affect gains? Strength, hypertrophy. So for strength, nutrition doesn't matter that much actually, because strength is mostly about practicing with a weight and less about building new stuff, okay? So nutrition is crucial actually for hypertrophy. So for strength, it doesn't matter that much because it's more about practice. It's like saying, how much does your nutrition matter for learning to shoot free throws? Like if you think about it, not that much. You just practice free throws, you get better. But for hypertrophy, we are talking about building muscle that needs resources. And so nutrition is more important. And around nutrition, I actually tried everything. I tried a lot of stuff. I tried bulking, cutting, different approaches during strength, different approaches during hypertrophy. I recently gained and then lost about 10 kilos or 25 pounds just for bulking and cutting, for building muscle. So I do have a lot of experience with this, and I think I can help you a lot. So this is what you can do. So again, nutrition is about hypertrophy, okay? The key to nutrition for hypertrophy is to understand this. It's all a matter of resources, okay? Hypertrophy needs resources, and it needs 2 kinds of resources. The first one is calories, okay, energy. If your body doesn't have the energy to even maintain its weight, let alone the ability to build new stuff and add new weight, okay? So the first one is calories, where you want to either be at a calories surplus, so in a bulk, or at least at maintenance. Okay, there you go. Or protein. Okay, you want to be above a certain threshold of protein in order to be able to build the most muscle possible. So starting from calories, okay? So you want to, in order to build muscle, okay, unless you are a total beginner, which if you're here, I assume you are not. Like total beginner, I mean like in the first 6 months of training, maybe a year. If you've been training for more than a year, you're not a beginner anymore, likely for more than 6 months seriously. So if you're not a total beginner, you are not gonna grow muscle in a cut. If you're losing weight, your goal should be to just maintain muscle, okay? Muscle grows when you're at maintenance, which means that your body weight, maintenance means your body weight is stable, okay? You're not adding weight, you're not losing weight. Bulking is when your body weight goes up. Cutting is when your body weight goes down. Like you can make it simpler than this. So, should you bulk or maintain? Okay. Now you should cut if you want to lose fat. That's fine. Okay. But if you want to gain muscle, the most muscle possible, should you bulk or maintain? Because gaining muscle is important to building a strong bench, of course. So bulking is slightly more beneficial, especially the more advanced you get, the more bulking is gonna get pretty crucial, okay? So for bulking, what you want to do, if you want to try with bulking, it needs to be slow. This is important. This is important. If you try to bulk fast, you're not gonna build more muscle, you're just gonna build more fat, which then you have to chew to lose, and for the whole time you lose fat, in a cut, you're not gonna gain muscle. So you want your bulking to be slow. How slow? 0.5% of your body weight gained, okay, plus per month, okay? This is very slow. So if you weigh, let's do 2 examples. Example 1, if you weigh 100 kilos. Example 2, if you weigh 200 pounds. If you weigh 100 kilos, 0.5%, that's 500 grams, okay? A month. So 125 grams a week, which means a caloric surplus, okay, of 125 calories a day. So that's where you start planning, and then looking at the scale, you can adjust, okay? And that's how everybody does it. There's no rocket science. If you weigh 200 pounds, 0.5% is gonna be exactly 1 pound, okay? Which again is roughly 500 grams, which results in 125 grams a week, or about 125 calories a day, okay? But this is the calculation and how you make it. This is how slow a bulk should be, okay? If you are 200 pounds, you should gain just 1 pound of body weight in a whole month. If you gain more than that, it's likely that everything more than this is just gonna be fat, okay? Totally unproductive. And this is for bulking, okay? This is likely more beneficial again, compared to maintaining your body weight, where you just train hard and don't aim at increasing your body weight over time, okay? Now for cutting, since you can't build muscle while cutting, your training should actually change a little bit, because there's no point in trying to gain muscle in a cut. So this is how I like to change my training when I'm in a cut, training in a cut. So what I do, for strength, again, no difference. This is all hypertrophy talk. Nutrition is important for hypertrophy. So for training, what I like to do is, regardless of whether a muscle is high priority or not, I just train all muscles with a minimalistic approach, which is, if you remember, 8 sets per week, even the priority muscles. And instead of training to failure, like usual, I don't do this, and instead I train at around 2 reps in reserve, okay? This is more than enough to maintain all of your muscle without making you waste time in the gym, because you're not gonna build muscle from more volume, and without risking injuries from being in a cut and having less resources. That's why we stay a bit farther from failure. And that's how I modify my training for cuts. This is a nice pro tip. And this was about calories, okay? The first kind of resource needed for hypertrophy. Now, how about protein? Again, for this, I just made a full 1 hour long guide on protein that I recommend that you watch. But here's like the 80-20, okay? Basically, you want to absolutely be above 1.2 grams per kilo or 0.55 grams per pound of body weight, okay? These numbers come from multiple meta-analyses that compared tons of studies together on the effect of protein on muscle growth. So what they saw was that you shouldn't change your protein whether you're bulking or cutting, okay? That's not beneficial. Timing is not beneficial. The real thing that matters for muscle growth is just how much, okay? How much actual protein you're eating, okay? And this is the amount. So this is the lowest amount. You don't want to go below this. If you go below this, then you're gonna see a lot less muscle growth. For optimal results, this is the bare minimum. For optimal results, you wanna be at or above 1.6 grams per kilo or 0.8 actually grams per pound per body weight per day. So if your weight is 100 kilos, 1.6 grams per kilos means 160 grams of protein per day. If your weight is 200 pounds, then 0.8 means again 160 grams of protein a day, okay? Roughly, this is the point where you start to maximize muscle growth, okay? If you want to go above this just to be more sure, because you never know, maybe you're an outlier, maybe you need more protein than the average person to maximize muscle, you can go all the way up to about 2.35 grams per kilo, okay? Beyond this, even with tons of data, you don't see benefits, okay? This is if you want to be like 100% sure. Or that's about 1.05 grams per pound, okay? Now, it was seen also with a lot of data that there's no health risk from eating a lot of protein, even at extreme amounts that are 2 times as much as the highest recommendation. So you're gonna be fine with the whole spectrum. It's just that here is where you start maximizing how much muscle you're gonna grow. And here is just if you want to be 100% sure, okay? Now for carbs and fats, because we talked about protein, carbs and fats, you can just pretty much fill out the rest of the space, the rest of the calories that you have, however you want. That don't matter much. And really, if you want to open a last point on nutrition, on supplements, pretty much almost all supplements, you probably know this by now, but like 99% of supplements are useless in the sense that they don't have any more benefits than not taking them, okay? They have no effects. No effects. The only exception that I know of, and I read quite a lot about this stuff, is creatine, okay? Creatine is the only supplement that gives you a small, and let's underline, small benefit on muscle and strength. It's cheap. If you want to eat 3 to 5 grams a day, Very simple approach, no need to cycle through and do weird shit, okay? We know that it's very healthy. 3 to 5 grams a day, every day, pretty much forever. And you can get the small benefits. Honestly, I'm so lazy about this that I can't even be bothered taking and bothering about this for such a small benefit that I stopped taking creatine after taking it for like 8 years straight. Saw no difference. And so it's up to you, okay? Just know, compared to everything that we talked about, the benefits are very small. Like the stuff that we covered in this video is 100 times more powerful for actually getting results. So you pick your priorities, okay? But if you want to maximize the small benefit, take your creatine. Like there's no problem with that. If you want to get to your protein intake more easily, you can consider whey, but even other kinds of protein, okay? Basically protein powder, okay? All protein powder is gonna do the job of helping you get into the total intake of protein. You can get there with regular food, meat, or even plant sources. But if you're more comfortable getting to the total amount of protein that we just talked about, okay? Using protein powder, that's fine, that's healthy too. It's not gonna give you more of a benefit though, okay? Just know that, okay? So with nutrition, we understood that it's all about hypertrophy because it needs resources. For calories, we understood that to build muscle, you either want to be maintaining or ideally in a slow bulk. And for protein, that you want to be above 1.6 grams per kilos or 0.8 grams per pound. And all of this comes from the latest and most rich research with the most data points that we have had until today. This is very reliable stuff, okay? You can hear anecdotal evidence. When you look at the data, this is the recommendations that I would honestly recommend following. And by the way, we're gonna cover this in a second. Training is still by far the most important part, okay? Nutrition is important, but okay, better to understand it in relation to everything that you do in the context of building strength and muscle. Now, we know our program, okay? We know our nutrition. There's a part that we haven't mentioned, which is what do you do in the gym? Okay? What do I mean by this? By this, I mean like the actual execution of the program, the actual moments where you're there in the gym and you have to execute the exercises in a certain form, in a certain tempo, a certain technique, a certain rest time. So the first point, let's make this bigger. The first point is form. Okay, by form, I mean the execution of the exercise. For example, like should you go full range of motion, not full range of motion? What technique should you choose, okay? So for form, let's look at, there's a difference between strength, so for our bench, and for our hypertrophy work. Both are bench muscles, chest, triceps, and front delts, and the other muscles, okay? This is the distinction. So for strength, your form usually is the one you're just stronger at. There's not much more to it. Sure, you want to be stable. Sure, there's tips that you can follow. But in terms of picking a certain grip or a certain position, a certain arch, the guideline is where are you stronger at? And that's what you're gonna build up and practice so that you're gonna get conditioned, not get injured, get used to, and get strong at, okay? For hypertrophy, really, there's not that much to say, okay? It's probably recommended to go full range of motion because there is some benefit, especially in certain exercises where you have tension in the stretched part of the movement, and that's why going full range of motion is probably useful. Also, you probably want to have a good technique. Not because it's gonna lead to more muscle or anything, but you're just gonna reduce injuries. And therefore you're gonna get more muscle out of that, out of not having to take breaks because of injuries. That's also true for strength, of course. You don't want to bounce heavy weights around and get hurt, okay? Control your weights. And we're gonna talk about tempo in a second. And so good technique is safer. You can go full range of motion, but form is not this big of a variable, okay? It's pretty straightforward. Now for bench, there's a lot that we can actually talk about. We could make a whole 2-hour long video just on technique for bench. How to warm up gradually, what gear to use, or the grip, or the cues, or the certain, like the trajectory. And first, I'm more of a specialist in the programming side, both because I think it's more effective, but also because that's what I like the most, what I like doing the most. I like to have a more simple approach to technique. And so what I'm gonna do, if you want to know a lot more about bench execution technique, cues, trajectory, and very tiny details, I'm gonna link in Project Delta under the summary of this video, so you can get it for free at the link in the description of this video, my favorite resources on this part of benching, okay? On the technique and everything that I just mentioned. So it's the link in the description. But in general, you're gonna find that the best grip, the best position tends to be the one you're stronger at. And this was form, but how about another kind of side of form, which is tempo, okay? Tempo is how fast you execute. Should you slow down? Should you control certain parts of the movement more? And again, we want to make a distinction between your tempo for bench and strength and for hypertrophy, okay? So for bench, again, usually what you want to do is think about, you don't want to slow down too much, okay? This is what I was trying to say on tempo. So sure, control can be good, but usually you're the strongest where there's a balance between speed and control. So basically you want an execution that's the fastest possible while still not getting crushed by the weight without control, okay? So if you're able to have a faster descent instead of a very slow one, you're gonna lift higher weights because you're gonna waste less energy, okay? So it's a balance between speed and control. If you can have a faster execution without losing control and be safe, you're gonna get strong, you're gonna be stronger. For hypertrophy, this is surprising. You see a lot of advice, even from big creators, about slowing the eccentric. And I did this for a long time and even recommended it. But when you look at data about this, it's actually surprising because this has zero benefits to hypertrophy. We can rationalize this however we want because it's been a kind of advice that we heard over and over and over again, but it has no effects. This is, in my opinion, when you discover that something has no effect, is always good news because it's just one less thing to think about. So for hypertrophy, you can just ignore tempo as a variable, okay? It doesn't matter. Just complete your sets, go to failure, whether you want to control your reps or whether you want to just do them fast, not like rebounding with an assault technique, but just with a decent technique, but without controlling them too much, you're gonna grow the same muscle as long as you go to failure, okay? Maybe a tiny pro tip, maybe. You can really slow down the last eccentric, okay? Like the last negative, when you're really over failure, like you completed your last rep and you're just lowering the weight, slowing that down can bring you a little bit beyond failure. And so maybe you're gonna get like 0.2% extra muscle, if that even matters thinking about, okay? So, and the final point about the gym is rest times. Rest times. So very quickly, the point of rest times, what is the point of rest times? It's just that so you can do quality sets after your current set. So you do your set, you're tired, okay, you're tired, and you're gonna recover over time. If you do your next set here, you're still too tired and this set is gonna be shit. If you do your set here, you're gonna be more fresh, the set is gonna be better, but you're gonna spend more time in the gym. So that's the balance to choose your rest times, okay? So for strength, in this case for bench, it's important that your rest times are a little bit longer because for strength, it's important that you are really fresh, okay? That's where the juice of strength training is in the freshness, is in the practicing a weight with your whole nervous system ready to push. That's what trains your strength. So for bench, we're talking about 3 to 5 minutes, usually, okay? Between sets. If you want to be safe, even 5 to 7 minutes. But 3 to 5 is pretty much it, okay? Let's say 5 as an average. Pretty simple, okay? Now, for hypertrophy, it kind of depends on the type of exercise. So we said before, there are heavier exercises like free compound exercises, isolation exercises are lighter, okay? So for heavier exercises, heavier, a plus, versus less heavy exercises. Basically for heavier exercises, you're gonna need to rest more around like 2 to 3 minutes. Maybe for lighter exercises like a bicep exercise, you're just maybe 1 or 1.5 minutes are gonna be enough. So there's a way actually to make sure that your rest times are always perfect. So these were guidelines, and you can stay on the low end based on how much time you have, okay? So if you have less time and you care a bit less about being a perfectionist, I guess, you can stay on the low end, okay? And if you have a bit more time or you really care about maximizing the quality of each set, you can stay on the higher end. But if you want to be like perfect, there's 2 simple checks that you can follow, okay? 2 checks for determining how long to rest between sets, or better, if you are ready for the next set, okay? So the first check is the cardio check. So if you're breathing heavy still, if your heart rate is a bit high, it's probably worth it to wait a little bit more, because your next set is gonna be pretty bad if you go into it that you're still, okay, that you're still very tired from the previous set. You're just gonna quit early. So the cardio set check is about the cardiovascular stuff, okay? Heart rate, breathing. The second set is the check is the muscle check, okay? And it's basically the most intuitive one, like feeling my muscles. Do I feel ready to do the next check, the next set? Like if I still feel kind of tired, I kind of know that I'm not gonna get in a quality set. I'm too tired. It's probably worth it to wait a little bit to get in a quality check, okay? A quality set. So those 2 are the 2 checks if you want perfect rest times, okay? So it's up to you whether you want to follow these and have no guidelines, or whether you want something more rigid and follow guidelines and save a bit more time, okay? So we really, in the gym, form is not that important, tempo is not that important as we covered, and for rest time, we covered the 2 checks. So the most important part, again, is that you train to failure, you don't skip workouts, and you follow your plan. That's the big part. In the gym, it's mostly about little tips that when you measure them in practice, even with recent research, you see that it doesn't matter that much. And that's actually what the next point is all about. Because we really covered a lot, and That's correct, because there is a lot to think about to train effectively, to get strong, to build muscle, but not everything has the same level of importance. So what I like to do is to always chuck all the full list of things that we covered into a pyramid that shows you what matters obsessing over versus what doesn't, okay? Basically, I structure my pyramids on 5 levels pretty much, okay? The first level is where stuff is useless, has no effect. Second level is where it gives you a tiny result, but it doesn't change the result drastically. The third level is pretty important, so pretty influential on the result. The fourth level is the stuff that's crucial. Without it, you can't get the result of building muscle and strength. And the last level is pretty much the single one thing that if you just do that, you're gonna pretty much succeed in 99% of cases. And if you don't do that, you're gonna fail. So when you look at everything that we covered, you can see that at the first level, we have stuff like 99% of supplements. Okay, they have just no effect other than the harmful effect of wasting your money. And also stuff like tempo, okay, slowing down your eccentric. We know that there's no usefulness to that. So let's go straight into 2 stars. Now here, we see most of the things lifters worry about, but they're actually not that important in the big picture. Things like having a perfect training split or the perfect exercises, okay? Or even the perfect form or rest time, okay? Most of those variables, even the perfect protein intake, okay? Or bulking instead of maintaining. Sure, all of these have benefits, but in the big picture, they are a lot smaller compared to other variables. For example, the ones that you see at level 3, okay? Here, we see for strength, things like injury prevention, which is just when you feel some pain, take it seriously. Or when you're introducing something new, take it slow, okay? Injury prevention is not about doing 10 weird exercises to condition your joints. Real injury prevention is about understanding when to take things slow and when it's time to stop and address the pain that you're feeling. So injury prevention for strength especially is pretty important, and volume for hypertrophy, okay? These are the things that can really, really influence your results. Not perfect training splits, not tier lists of exercises. Now, if volume, that's so massively important for hypertrophy, which is massively important for strength, is only at 3 stars, what could be at 4? At 4 stars, we have 2 things, okay? And this is really important. Like, again, the higher you go, the more you should obsess over this stuff, okay? You see a 10x here. It means that each level is not a bit more important than the previous one. It's 10 times more important, okay? So if you worry about training splits, about exercises, you should worry 10 times more about volume, and you should worry 100 times more about, first, training to failure, okay? Even if you do less volume, if you train to failure, you're still gonna grow muscle. If you don't train to failure, you're not gonna grow muscle. That's just it. And therefore, you're not gonna get stronger in the long term. So train to failure for hypertrophy is 4 stars. It's ridiculously important. Train hard. Don't quit your sets early. And the second one is everything that contributes to motivation, which is just consistency in the gym, okay? That's why, so for example, this is so important because consistency is really the big thing affecting volume. So in practice, volume the kind of volume that limits your results is not how many sets per week you do, but it's how many workouts you don't skip. And that's why motivation is so important. So if you're able to find a better training philosophy, that's why I'm such an advocate for training both strength and muscle at the same time, building up your bench and your physique, because it's so much fun in comparison to regular bodybuilding, in my opinion, but I've seen this in many people, that this is gonna lead you to be more consistent, train to failure without it being such a chore, and this is gonna lead to much better results that you wouldn't even expect. So things about motivation are super important. Even just having a program makes you a lot more motivated because you feel that you have a strategy to follow instead of training randomly. So this is very important. 4 stars. Like, this is not very important. This is crucial. Without this, you're just not gonna grow muscle almost at all past the low intermediate level, which is where most people are stuck. Guess what? Guess why, actually, was what I wanted to say. And if this is 4 stars, what's gonna be 5 stars? Actually, 5 stars is just a combination of the most important thing, which is this is too big. Train hard, don't skip workouts. So this is 5 stars because if you just do this and ignore every other piece of advice, you're gonna get very far. You're gonna make progress for many years. You're stuck right now, just focus on this. Don't skip workouts, ever. And train hard, train to failure. You're gonna see mind-blowing results in enough time, of course, not in months, but in years, you're gonna blow past what you think is your genetic limit if you just do this, okay? So this shows you a whole spectrum and puts in perspective all the tiny details that we focus on, where maybe we are skipping 20 workouts a year and we are focusing on the perfect exercise. And maybe we're not going to failure, okay? Put stuff into perspective. So now with this, we really covered the whole spectrum. We know how to create a program, and I created a sample program in the link in the description. We covered how much to train, how often to train, the best exercises, even nutrition, what to do in the gym, the whole spectrum, okay? And really, for a final word that I want to have is about this idea of building strength and hypertrophy at the same time. This is what I specialize in because this is what I've been doing for the last 10 years. This is how I've been training. This is almost the only way that allowed me to get so advanced. And the big reason is because I had a lot more fun. I now have a library kind of achievements, of things to be proud of, thanks to the strength side. But also I didn't have to sacrifice my physique because we can fake this, but we go to the gym also to build a physique. We care about this, and that's fine. And this allows you, this whole approach that I teach on this channel, what I've been following for 10 years, what I've coached people for a long time on, even to elite levels, is on doing both at the same time. It's so much more fun, and for that reason, even a lot more effective in practice. And a lot of the models that I teach here, and in general throughout the videos, are original. They're a lot, how can I say this? They're sometimes more effective than stuff that you find from specialists. So this is, I think, something that most people want. Like most people who train for strength also want to build muscle. Most people who train like bodybuilders also want to dabble in strength. This can absolutely be done. And this is what I want to bring forward with this channel. So if you want, by the way, just to shortcut this whole process of learning and learn everything I use and know, and even stuff that people paid me a lot for coaching for, You can check out the Strong and Jet course in the link in the description in Project Delta. And that contains everything I know, the most effective stuff, all in order on building strength and hypertrophy, especially at the same time, even up to an elite level. So you can check it out. So as usual, at the end of every video, I'm gonna leave you with a clip of a lift of mine from my archive, already recent, and a physique update, just for, I guess, proof that I practice what I preach. So you can enjoy that. And I'm gonna see you next week. I got a nice banger coming up, so you want to be sure to be there for that.